Hi, welcome to Fantasy Fiction Focus. Today we're talking with Rachel Sentis. She is a publicist with Gal Friday Publicity in Vancouver, BC. And today Rachel's going to be talking a little bit about what that actually means for authors, I guess, but what being a publicist means for somebody in the publishing world, and also mainly about publicists for science fiction and fantasy writers. So welcome, Rachel.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so tell us a bit first, I guess, for those who are not in the know, what is a publicist? What do they do? Are they like an agent, or what do they do?
Publicists are not like agents. But they do act as an intermediate person between the author and the media, and generally mainstream media. If you want to get on television or radio or in print in different articles, a publicist is one of those people that can open a few doors for you and introduce you to those people that can build some awareness about your book.
So have you been doing this for a while? Is it like, do you have a specific training in this? Do you go to school for this, or what's it all about?
Well, for me, I've been a publicist officially for about 7 years now, 5 years with my own company, and I started out as a writer like any other writer. I published early short stories and had an interest in all aspects of writing, and then worked in a bookstore doing events as well as working with a lot of different authors. And I was listening to an author one time talk about how he'd like to get on TV, and so I thought, hey, I would love to help that person do that. And that's how I kind of fell into it. And then I was able to use my writing skills to create things like press releases and pitches, and found out that I was pretty good at it. So that's how I ended up in publicity. But lots of people can take business or communications courses to learn about it, but I really think some of the best people as publicists are writers themselves.
So being a publicist for a writer, I suppose it has some unique elements. I mean, you can't just say, I'm a publicist so I can represent authors, actors, sports personalities, musicians. Is there something specific about representing people in the writing world?
Well, I think the thing is you have to have some kind of innate knowledge on how the written word is sent out into the public. I think you can be taught that, but it really comes down to whether you're a good salesperson or not. Because doing publicity is going out and selling. And if you can't sell, then you're probably not going to be a good publicist. And it's not for everyone, for sure.
Now, a lot of authors these days, and I know this from my own work, I suppose, a lot of authors these days are expected to do their own publicity, their own marketing, and that sort of thing, and the publishers don't do as much as they used to, especially the small ones. There's no budget for that. So why would someone want to use somebody like yourself, like a publicist, instead of doing it themselves? Apart from the fact they'd have less work to do, are you better than them doing it themselves?
Well, I think I'm better than them, but I think the thing is that I can give another set of eyes that I think authors naturally are going to be very close to their own work, and sometimes might not see every possibility that you can do when you're talking to the public about your book. Not only, as you mentioned, it takes a lot of time to go out and do marketing, advertising, and publicity, and I think that a publicist just has that different look. We're looking at your book. We have to like it. We have to get excited about it. It's something I want to work on, but it's also I have a different viewpoint on it. And I think when you take the time to build, that rapport with the writer and the author and get their messages across, a good publicist will take that and then change it into something that media might find more interesting. I think it's just another way to enhance what you're doing, and a lot of people hire freelance publicists because they simply either don't have the time or they just want another perspective.
Now you're in Vancouver, in British Columbia, in Western Canada. Now, do you just work with Canadian authors, or you're open to offers from all over the world?
All over the world. I work with Canadians, United States, small publishers as well as authors, the UK, really any place that geographically there's no boundaries anymore. Technology has solved that problem. I don't actually meet 3/4 of my clients. It's rare these days.
Yeah, I suppose so. With the internet age now. So I suppose, really, are you any good? Have you had some success?
I have. I think one of my big, because I don't just do books, but I think I got a national CTV story for a person who's rescuing dogs from Afghanistan. I had a really good ones on BNN and CNN. One was for a musician who had written a book, as well as money coaching ideas, and I've got regular people in Globe and Mail and Huffington Post, and for every author has a different level of what they view as success. So my successes are what, if I can get what they've asked for, then that's successful for me.
So you haven't specialized. It sounds like you've got dogs rescued from Afghanistan. That sounds a bit specialized, perhaps. But even so, do you specialize in any particular type of book? Obviously, we're going to cover the science fiction fantasy genre, but do you just do? Do you only do kids' books? Do you only do adult books, or do you do everything?
I do tend to work a little bit more with nonfiction, because nonfiction has usually an easier message to get out. But the fiction I work on is usually fiction that I like. So if there's a really cool horror book out, then I would like to work on something like that. I've done a lot of children's books because I specialized in the children's area as a preschool teacher, as a child manager at Indigo Books and things like that. So children's books are a big area that I love. The fantasy and science fiction, I love reading all that. So for me, the dog rescuing, he's turning it into a book now, which is great because we've already got his platform kind of set now, and so now his next part of the book is going to be interesting. But for me, I'm a little different from regular publicists in that I have my hand in different aspects of the publishing world that not everybody might, and so I can afford to work on things I really enjoy.
So if you're marketing a science fiction fantasy author, I suppose that we should look into that a little bit. Is there something specific that you would need from them, or is there a way in which you would market that to the world?
Well, as fantasy books specifically, generally, well, they deal with journeys, they deal with experiences, they deal with quests, they deal with a new world that we're making up or an author is using, and I find that it's more of a reflection on their own life and to relate to people outside of every book has a story to tell, but fantasy, I find, reaches a lot of people, but you have to dig into the human aspect of that to make it really work. And that's more about the themes of the book, the desires, the fears that the characters take in the book. And I think, did I answer your question? I'm not sure. I may have gotten off track.
No, I was just curious because obviously with you mentioned that you don't, you prefer to market books or publicize books that grab your attention, that you're interested in, and if you're reading a lot of fantasy and science fiction, that obviously it's easier for you to get excited about those and market them to other people. So, but is there some sort of angle you have to take when you're telling the media about a fantasy or science fiction book?
Well, the angle is more the mainstream, especially for mainstream media, is those two, desire and fear. Those are the things that make people do things. And when you're looking at a book, you're trying to relate to an everyday thing in life. How does an audience relate to losing something or trying to find something, power, fulfillment, things like that. And if that type of book speaks to you that way, then it's going to be much easier to talk to, you know, about the book to other people. When I go to the media, for example, I have a great fantasy book. It's a story that's a journey that's got some, you know, romance in it, but also a fantasy element. Well, it was inspired by somebody, you know, who fought cancer and who got through that journey by going into this other world. And so it's really pulling out the thematic elements of the fantasy book, but relating them to a general audience. How would this make me feel? Oh, I battled cancer. You know what? I am along for this journey.
Ah, so obviously, like I say, the human element, making sure that people are going to relate to the story, that, even if it's fantasy. So I guess then, so even if not everybody, you and I are not, or anybody in the world, we're not likely to go off on a quest looking for a ring of power every week or anything like that. But somehow you have to try and relate it to real people and their situations.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Because that's the thing is that. You know, I want to know what inspired you to write this journey. Was there something that happened in a past experience you had, or a memory, or something that made you write this story? And really, the backstory about the author and their inspiration is what can push forward the discussion of fantasy. It's not always front and center, and it should never be about selling the book to the media. It should be about the story between you and the audience and how it makes them feel. I think that's the biggest thing about marketing. Marketing, you can place things and you can see how it's going to go, because generally you have a lot of control over that. In the media, you don't have a lot of control, so you need to make sure that your message gets across. And it'll be, you know, something like, well, I had this horrific experience, and I changed this place into this fantastical world, so people could really identify with it. And that's then how you mention your book.
Now, you'd also mentioned in some of the notes we've been chit-chatting about before we went on air here about, you mentioned the media, of course. The days of sending books out to mainstream media only, I guess, are sort of over now, because there's all this stuff online and everything. So, can you tell us a little bit about what is meant by the media, I suppose, now in terms of publicizing a book and an author?
Well, there's really, I think it's come down to sort of two branches. There's the social media, which is a fabulous way to, you know, send out little snippets of your book, or relate it to something that the people who are reporting on social media are going to talk about. Then there's the mainstream media, which tend to have a little bit more of a push into all the different venues that people see media in. So, you know, online, in print, on television, on radio. They tend to they're weaved together really well. And they use social media as well. But I think the thing is if you, for example, I always get somebody saying, I want to go on the Ellen show tomorrow. And I'll say to them, that's great, but that's not going to happen tomorrow. But it doesn't mean it's out of the realm of possibility. But what you want to be doing is you want to be talking to your local people first and discuss, you know, how could this television segment work? How can this, you know, work together with social media as well as with mainstream media? I think the thing with mainstream media is you just have a bigger reach in some areas. And it comes down to, where is your audience? If your audience are 65-year-old plus, are they going to be on Twitter? Are they going to be on, you know, Facebook? You have to find out where your audience is, and that's how you determine what type of media you're going to work with.
Now, you mentioned on here as well about capitalizing on trends, presumably the things that are trending on social media, I guess. What do you mean by that, though? Can you explain a bit more about that?
The internet is great for using different trends. There's lots of websites that highlight trends in here's what's going to be in television this week. Here's what's going to be on the movies. Here's what's fashion. There's top trending sites, and they report everything from not only mainstream media but also social media as well. And for me, I just phone up, you know, a radio producer and say, what are you guys working on this week? You know, what do you guys want to talk about? Oh, you want to talk about, you know, prisons, or you want to talk about this. Hey, my person might have something to talk about there. That's their trend this week. They're doing a series. And so what you can do is you can go on, say, top 100 trends for February, and see what might be on there that you might be able to relate with your book. And I think, you know, for fantasy, I was looking through top 100s, and there were some people who had this glowing internet sword that you could buy to, you know, interact with your favorite book online. And that's a trend. So, you know, you can work those keywords in somewhere into your pitch and talk about the trend of interactive fantasy role playing. You know, there's a lot of different things you can look at. Not everything's going to work. I was working on something about steampunk, and lo and behold, a trend, you know, this week were fashion turning into old folksy steampunk stuff. So just mentioning that there are trends in your area is what gets the media interested.
Yeah, and I guess there was somebody I was hoping to interview for these things, which had written a book about the Wars of the Roses, Richard III, and that sort of thing, and they're able to trend into these recent stories about Richard III's body being found and things like that, I guess. But if you've got science fiction, more strictly science fiction, I suppose, like space stuff and aliens and this sort of thing, is there anything trending on that usually? I suppose there'd be movies coming out, right, that you could link to and be associated with?
Definitely right now, the Comic-Cons and the fan expos are all gearing up for their shows. So, you know, all the Doctor Who, all of the, so anything, if you've got something related to time travel, or you've got something that's related to, everything's related to everything in some way. So it's just finding the right sort of niche to say, oh, well, if you love Doctor Who, you would love this story because it's, you know, has the same type of entertainment. Oops. So, sorry, I had a glitch there.
No, glitches are something that we come up with all the time here on Fantasy Fiction Focus. We live in a fantasy world where occasionally the person being interviewed disappears from the screen into another dimension. So our viewers are used to that sort of thing, I think. But you mentioned about the time travel and comic expos, I think you meant. Do you go to those things either as a fan or in your role as a publicist to try and find new clients?
I go in both capacities. I've always been a fan, huge fan, so I go to as many. I was in Toronto last summer, and I'll be at the Vancouver one this year, and I go as a fan because I love it. But I also go, I've also been to shows representing clients of mine, and so, and looking for new people to talk to. You never know where that opportunity is going to come up, and lots of actors and celebrities have books out all the time, and sometimes they want a little bit more than what they're going to get from a traditional publisher, and I work alongside those publicists as well to just, you know, bring a bigger talk about their product or their book.
So I guess the message I'm getting here about publicity as well is, although I do a lot of this stuff myself, but obviously I'm not a professional publicist like you, and you're far more knowledgeable about these things. But I think the message I've always thought is there is an awful lot more out there than sending your book out to try and get reviews and doing a book signing in a store. You've got to be aware of everything. If you've done a gardening book, there's got to be an element to it. If you've done a book about animals or childcare or investment in the stock market, whatever it is, there's lots of, you've got to look at every angle.
I think you're going to limit yourself if you just send things to book reviewers and you just do, you know, a book signing in a bookstore. I think those days are long gone, and I think that the more innovative you can become, even with your packaging, how you're sending things out. You know, there's horror books that are packaged in coffins, and they're sent out to really top bloggers who really love those. And bloggers are a section that really should be cultivated and pitched to properly. I work with bloggers a lot, and I find that the top bloggers, if you send them a really great package, the response for that type of publicity is going to be great. But I do think even if you want to do book signing, think about how your book relates to something. You know, I had somebody whose book was about, you know, a police officer, and then they ended up doing a book signing in a uniform store. You know, where the police officers buy the uniforms, and you know, and tying in things to the news. You know, today there's a lot of headlines going on today about the dying with dignity. Well, one of the fantasy books I have, again, related to cancer and being able to die on your own terms. That's something you jump on. So those are the types of things you do have to be aware of. But, you know, I think you need to have a plan in place. You can't just jump every single time. You should have a strategy, and everything you do should make sense. You know, and again, know where your audience is.
Okay, so if someone is, if let's say me or someone else, we just written a book, it's been published, it's not self-published, it's been, a publisher's maybe put it out, and there's not going to be a marketing campaign as such. They think, well, I think I should have a publicist. I'll call Rachel and meet with her. So what would happen then? Or what would you talk about, and how would it all start?
Well, generally people come and they take a look at my website and they ask me, you know, what can you do for me? The first thing I'm going to ask them is, well, what is your book about, and why do you think you need publicity? Because a lot of books don't. A lot of books just do fine with marketing. So is this something that you really have in mind, and what is your expectation, and what do you think publicity is going to do for you? I've met with lots of authors who come to me and think they need a publicist when really they just need marketing. And that's the first thing I want to define with someone. I usually send them out a questionnaire that really kind of highlights what your goals are, because publicity does not mean instant sales. And that's a big thing for people to understand. It's not like marketing. If I do an interview and you go on an interview, the next day your book sales aren't going to shoot through the roof. It helps with, it's almost like a different version of word of mouth. And so you have to really understand what it is a publicist does and whether it's right for you. And then the next thing is I read their book.
Well, I think it's important. I think to do as many things as possible. It sounds to me like these things all have to work together to get the right result.
Oh yes, 100%. I think everyone, if they're going to be doing all of this themselves, then they really need to sit down and think of a budget, the budget for time as well as the budget for what they want to put out there, marketing and advertising. And publicity is one of those aspects. If you feel your book is the type that you want to reach a bigger, different type of audience, like, you know, if your book is going to go on Canada AM, is it the type of book that they're going to want to talk about? You know, or are you looking for more of a specialty focus? It's the relevance of your work that we're looking at. So you know, maybe your best spot is a really good radio show that's broadcasting out of, you know, Indiana. They have a great, you know, response rate for the type of books you do. So as a publicist, we should be talking to you about what your goals are, what you want to see, and know that it doesn't happen overnight, just like bestsellers don't happen really overnight.
And I suppose the message I suppose we should be telling people is that if you're hiring a publicist like yourself, somebody who really knows what they're doing, and not only knows about publicity, they know about the book business because they've been a writer and worked in the bookstores and they know about publishing. I mean, the writer can get on with writing.
That's really what we want to do is you know, take that aspect off your shoulders so you can go and write your second book, because you're only as good as your first book. And you can, you know, sell that book for years and have great success. But every writer, myself included, wants to write that next thing. So if you're outsourcing different tasks, then you can concentrate on that. And that's really what, you know, the purpose should be is, you know what, I know a bit about this, I want to do some, and I applaud that. I have, you know, clients who know people in the media, and I say, go talk to them, you know, tell me how it goes. And if you needed a little bit of extra help, then talk to me, because then that way I can open a few more doors, just because I've spent a lot of time making those strong connections and knowing what they're looking for. So yeah, writing is the key aspect, and because if I have no writers, I have no job, so I'll have to be a full-time writer then.
Yeah, I think that's what it would be if you're a writer. If you're a writer, and you know how to write, you wouldn't. I wouldn't go out and try and draw the cover myself or do the illustrations for a picture book myself, because I don't do that. I do the story, and I don't do. I'm not a printer, and all the things that go into making a book. So why would I try and do those things? Why would I try and do those things if I was? Oh, there's my phone this time is interrupting our interview. Why would I try and do those things if I'm not an expert at it? So now you, I believe, are working on a particular book right now. I think, aren't you? Or with
I just started working on a great book. It's called Feast of Fates. Feast of Fates. It's by Christian A. Brown, and it's a fantasy book. It's quite fabulous.
Where's the cover? Oh, there it is. I say, don't just tell us about it. Show us the cover.
There's the cover. It's the first in a series, and he's already on to his third book right now. And last weekend, when he was selling on Amazon, he was out selling Game of Thrones. So he's getting great reviews, and now we're building up to his first interviews. So, it takes a little while to find that right angle for these, like I mentioned, but once you get going, he has put everything into place. So he's been doing, he has people working with him to do marketing and advertising and now publicity.
And so this is book, obviously it's already out. When did it come out?
This one just came out in July, and we're also working on the second one then. And he started marketing it in July, so it's been out for a few months, but it's still fresh. So that's what we're looking for. Is some people will come to the book that's 5 years old, and unless something new has happened in that area of that they've been working in, I'm not going to say yes to pushing that. In fact, most authors, if they're going to hire a publicist, should really be looking at 6 months before the book is published. But I will often take books that are just out, because if the people know what they're doing, it can really work well. It depends on the book, of course. But because he's doing a series, and we're going to be launching them all kind of within a few months of each other, working on this one and getting him established as a face to be seen and someone to be heard is really important for a fantasy series.
Now, how long is a book fresh for? If a book comes out, not that it would come out on January 1st, it's a terrible day to launch a book, but if a book came out on January 1st, how long would it be new for? Would it have like a life of about 9 months to a year?
About a year. I think you have a year to really, really push it, but the first 3 months are really important. And the first 3 months are when you want to be hitting up as many people as possible. And I only say that number just because that's what I've heard from the media people that I speak to. And in fact, people, depending on what you're looking at, because print media, obviously, they go 6 months ahead. So, if I'm going to call up Chatelaine Magazine and looking for a book review, she wants your books almost 6 months in ahead, because that's what she's looking at right now. So if you're calling her in July with a brand new book, she's already looking at October releases. So it's really important to understand how the media do their calendars, their editorial calendars, and how they work. And I guess that's what I spend almost most of my days on, phoning people and getting no. So you have to be used to rejection, and understanding how they work on their stories.
I think that's the thing. I think I found that with book signings in bookstores locally in Calgary, where I am. It's if you're looking at trying to get book signings organised for the fall, you need to be talking to people in probably April, May at the very latest. If you're trying to do something in the summer, you need to be talking to people in sort of January, February. And if you're looking at trying to get into, say, a fall book festival, you better be talking to those people about 10 months in advance.
Mm-hmm. Now the difference is with some of the larger media, say like you were trying to get onto the Today Show or something like that in the States, if you go too far in advance, they forget about you. So you give them usually all your packages and information about a month in advance, and then you keep checking in with them. And often, depending on the type of media, they'll have forgotten already what you sent. So those types of things, you don't want to go too far in advance. But for the regular type of media, which is maybe not quite so high up, yeah, you want a good 3 months in advance to be able to really prep them on what you're doing.
Well, it sounds like it's all very complicated, and it sounds like people should really hire a publicist to do all this for them.
Well, but I think the thing is, everybody's book is going to be different. Some books just lend themselves to publicity naturally. Some books just come out and everybody, and word of mouth is so great, and you really need the writing communities behind you. I mean, you've been doing this a long time and you do excellent, and that's the thing is, not everybody's going to need a publicist, and when it comes down to it, as I said, it's really about sales. It's about me going in, finding out what they want, and pitching it to them. And I probably get no's, 80% of the time, but one of those no's will turn into a yes, and then you start to really roll. So I don't necessarily think it's complicated. I just think it's a bonus if you work with a publicist, because there are some people I can get to because I have that moniker that other people might not be able to, because they feel that sometimes authors won't take feedback directly, and sometimes because they're so close to their work. And they can say anything to me, and I'm not going to take it personally, and that's a real asset to having a publicist.
So I guess you must have met, well, maybe you haven't, but have you met people who want to hire a publicist, but then are very, very reluctant to appear in public and because they're very shy or something like that?
Yeah, I have had experiences with shyness, but that's the thing is, if I know a person is going to be really bad and they're on television and they feel they can't do it, then don't put them there. I mean, I guess the thing is, you never know for sure how something is going to turn out, and I have had bombs go off, and I had somebody who killed his career right on radio and had no idea he'd done it. And you try as a publicist to not put your client in a position where they're going to fail. So I'm not going to set you up to failure if I know you're not going to be strong at answering some questions. Between me and the person interviewing you, we're going to decide whether you should go on or not.
Well, it sounds like you know exactly what you're doing in this, which is great, and it sounds like you're doing quite well for yourself because you've been doing this for some time now. Now, do you have a busy year planned? Is 2015 a busy year for you?
I do. I actually, because I've been working in the book industry, and I love all aspects, and I've been working in mini projects actually, and doing some door opening that way. I'm actually branching out to do more dog and pet books, because that's a real love of mine. And so I've been doing some more pet PR, and I really love that part. So right now I've got some great clients and exciting kinds of things in the U.S. as well as here, but I'm looking forward to what the year brings, and I think that the pet PR area, because I love working with those books, is exciting for me.
Well, hopefully there'll be some people viewing our little interview here at Fantasy Fiction Focus who are writing a science fiction or fantasy book about pets. And that will be extremely relevant for you to market for them, I think. So yeah, it's been great. I think if anybody watching needs to think about publicity, certainly talk to Rachel at Gal Friday. She is your go-to gal, I guess, in Vancouver. Even just to see what she does and see if she can do anything for you. Thank you very much for being with us today, and we wish you every success with your clients and everything in the coming year.
Well, thank you so much for having me on, Simon. I really appreciate it. You do so much for the authors. I don't know how you find the time, but it's fabulous to keep in touch with you. And by all means, I'm open to conversations with everybody about what they might think they need for publicity.
Great. Well, again, thanks for being on here, and the best of luck this year.
Thank you. Same to you.